Welcome to Tech Leader 360.
We were able to convince Bill Gates.
Effective leaders understand the weight of what their leadership is, but they don't recognize it in themselves.
In my experience, stories change culture.
Why are you going to all these Muslim countries? Are you a drug smuggler?
And there was an entrepreneur there that was talking about product market fit.
What made you to leave the Microsoft?
I was doing well at Microsoft.
Can you talk about leadership experience in nonprofits?
Leadership happens top down, side to side, bottom up.
Do you empower your staff or do you micromanage your staff?
It would be foolish.
All of these people, whether it's Satya or Bill Gates or Steve Ballmer, Paul Moritz, I mean, they're just endless number of people who kind of gave you time. And with that time, you actually learn things.
Leaders have built their own stories. Tomorrow, you can build your own story. Use Tech Leader 360 as your reference tool to build your leadership journey.
If you are a software engineer or a data scientist or a solution architect or any IT professional, this is for you. Hello everyone, welcome to Tech Leader 360. My name is Jagan Chittiprolu. Today we have a fantastic guest with us who is a Microsoft Corporate Vice President, Ron Pessner. Ron, welcome to our podcast, Tech Leader 360. So thank you, Ron, for coming to our show, Tech Leader 360. So how do you feel seeing this studio and everything?
It's really awesome, and it's totally my pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, I know you through Harvard Business School Club, and I met you in person. We have had a fantastic lunch together. It was an awesome time in Seattle downtown. UW, right? That was a UW.
Yeah, in the University District.
Yeah,
yes.
fantastic experience. So thank you, Ron, for your time. And let's go deep dive into this podcast, Tech Leader 360.
Sounds great.
So you know the purpose of this Tech Leader 360, right? So we wanted to inspire our audience by taking the technology, especially the knowledge that technology leaders are built, and we wanted to take those knowledge and give back to the community in the form of giving back to the community. Awesome. So, Ron, can you talk about your experience in terms of your childhood experience and before we go deep dive into your Microsoft experience?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and I actually was fortunate enough to grow up in my grandparents' house. I got my first job in third grade, which is, I know it might sound crazy, but I delivered papers for 6 years, and I've pretty much had a job continuously since third grade.
Since third grade?
I've done all kinds of things.
Wow.
I was fortunate enough to go to the University of Virginia undergrad. It was not my first choice. It wasn't my parents' first choice either. They really wanted me to go to W&L, Washington Lee University, but I chose University of Virginia. Had a really great experience there. Actually met my wife there in undergrad. And right out of undergrad, I went to go work on Wall Street. I spent 4 years working at Credit Suisse First Boston in investment banking as a financial analyst.
So was it in Boston or?
No, it was in New York City.
New York City, I see.
I spent 2 years in New York City, and then I transitioned and spent 2 years in Singapore.
I see.
Working for the firm. And had an incredible experience there. Learned a lot of things about myself. I learned that hard work is not necessarily sufficient. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours. But I had great mentors there, and I learned a lot, just generally about finance, about how the world works. It was really an incredible experience for me to live outside the U.S., which I thought was fantastic. My wife and I got married the day before we moved to Singapore, and so that was a fun experience. And if you can imagine, this was in about the mid 90s. So the internet was a brand new thing in the mid 90s. It cost $2 a minute to call home.
Correct.
So you can imagine, like calling my mom, like, Mom, we're doing okay. And then, okay, I got to go.
So were you using the phone cards at that time, the calling cards?
So we had Singapore Telecom, fortunately, had direct service to my apartment. The apartment block is no longer there. It's been ripped down in Singapore. This was before there was a browser on the internet. So we just had a DOS prompt.
Wow.
And most of the friends that we stayed in close contact with were folks that were in grad school because they also had internet access at that time,
Wow.
which was great. I then I decided after 4 years that I was needed to change jobs. I decided that I really didn't, there's some things I loved about finance. Like I really enjoyed the pace. I really enjoyed the people I worked with. I enjoyed the intellectual challenge, but it was very transactional. It wasn't about building a product. And so I really wanted to make that shift and do more product-based work. I don't know at the time I really knew what that was, but I chose business school as my sort of transition back, and I was fortunate enough to get admitted to Harvard, and so decided to move to Boston.
So how many years of experience that you have had before getting into Harvard Business School?
I had 4 years. I had 4 years of work experience before doing that. So 2 years in New York and then 2 years in Singapore.
Yeah, the selection process at Harvard Business School is really tough, right? So what made you to get into, what was your story to tell to HBS at that time?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think when they look at different folks coming in, they look at your background, and they sort of they're looking to sort of compose the class with people with a lot of different backgrounds.
Balanced profile.
A very balanced profile. And they look at someone like my profile. I had some typical background in the sense that I was working in investment banking, but it was a little unusual because I had some overseas experience.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think really helped me. And then in the interview process, I got to interview with Koh Boon Wee, who was the chairman of Singapore Telecom.
I see.
And he's also an HBS alum.
Wow.
And it was incredible. And I remember being so intimidated going to his office and having to sit down and talk with him. But through that conversation, he clearly recommended me to the school, which was, fantastic. And I remember when I got in, I was just overwhelmed and really excited about the opportunity to go.
Fantastic. So can you talk about your classroom experience at HBS? Because I wanted to see your perspective of how was the teaching methodologies and what was your experience in the classrooms and your living experience? Yeah,
so I probably took the classroom experience maybe a little too seriously.
Really?
Yes. I was nervous. I didn't know exactly how it was going to go. And it was the first year was really a lot of foundations, very set curriculum with all the same people. And then the second year was a lot of rotation through different topics. And we had about 80 people in my class, in my section. And it was assigned seating. So, you would show up and the professor, typically 3 or 4 cases you were preparing each day. And I think, through that process of having read so many different cases about so many different companies, it was really, I think, very inspiring and challenging because each one of them is like a puzzle where you're trying to figure out like, what's the unique angle here? How should people think about this? What's the thing I'm missing in this situation? And the thing I really like the most, you probably had a similar experience, it's just incredible. Like when you do the case study, and then at the end, when they bring in the protagonist, right, for the case study, or they have, people come in, and we did, my year, I graduated in 98. We did a case study on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com, who was their primary competitor at the time, which is just incredible to think about. And then they had people, senior execs from Amazon come in and tell us what we got right and what we got wrong in the case. Yeah, it was really, it's been very, I've really enjoyed that experience a lot. It was very challenging, but at the same time, I think really inspiring. Like it's kind of fun. It helps you sort of step away, I think, from the day to day. Like I think there's something about like digging into a case and trying to look at it from all possible angles and figure out, okay, what would I do if I were in this situation? What would I take with me?
So after first year, did you take any any electives that you have taken, any specialization courses after that?
No, I just did the general. I really enjoyed the entrepreneurial management and entrepreneurial finance classes. I thought those were really interesting, and some of the general leadership courses were interesting. The parts I didn't really enjoy the business marketing. That was probably my least favorite.
I see.
But I really liked just a lot of the entrepreneurial management, how to think about how to start up something or how to get people focused, how to set a mission, how to go raise money, all of those sorts of things I thought were pretty interesting.
Fantastic. So after 1998, right?
Yes.
So then once you finish your MBA at HBS, so then what prompted you to come to Seattle?
So I came to Seattle because I was working right out of business school. Former colleague of mine at First Boston tried to convince me to go work at a late stage mezzanine debt fund doing growth capital for growth businesses. And I did that in Nashville, Tennessee for about a year. In that time, the firm really struggled and went through a management change. And the gentleman out here in Seattle who was on the board, a friend of mine, John Cunningham, convinced me to move to Seattle. I was trying to decide between Seattle and the Bay Area because I knew I wanted to come and work somewhere in the tech industry. And so we decided to come to Seattle. We just started a family at this point, and we thought this would be a slightly easier place to live than the Bay Area. And I went to go work at GoToNet, which was a Paul Allen funded startup. GoToNet, yes. And it was a kind of a portfolio of businesses. One that I was responsible for was the free web hosting business. And so we were helping small businesses set up websites, set up their e-commerce front end. This was back when search was pretty new. It was before Google was founded.
I see.
And so it was kind of that era.
So during the Netscape Navigator era.
Yes, right. It was right after that. Yes.
Right after that.
Yeah, and then I stayed there it was about 130 employees when I joined, and we grew to about 500, and then we were bought out by a company in Bellevue, InfoSpace, and then that company grew to be about 1,800 employees.
Yeah, Bellevue downtown, InfoSpace. Yes. Yeah, I remember in 2005-06 timeframe.
Exactly, and then through that downturn, about 2001, that company went from about 1,800 employees down to about 350, which was an incredibly challenging experience to navigate through.
Exactly.
It was just a tough time, I think, generally in the industry here in the U.S. And globally too. And then my former manager at GoToNet had returned to Microsoft, Rick Thompson, and he thought that I would be a good fit for a team in Windows, and so had me come meet some folks, and I went through an interview loop. And I remember at the time thinking, do I really want to go work at Microsoft? It sort of felt to me at the time like Microsoft had a number of missteps around sort of 2000, 2001.
Correct.
Like Office 2000 wasn't particularly, or Millennium Edition wasn't particularly well received. And the company kind of missed the internet wave and was trying to catch up with that. And so it felt to me like it might not necessarily be a great place. But I was really impressed by the people that I met when I went through the interview process. And I ended up taking a job working in Windows and working on Windows Media Center.
Oh, was it in 2004, 5?
2003.
2003.
Yeah, 2003.
Awesome. So that is where you got into Microsoft.
Yes.
Wow, that's when you joined Microsoft, you were what kind of a role at that time?
So I joined. It was interesting. I had no idea. Like I was an industry hire, so I had no idea where I sort of fit in the whole system, and it was kind of a funny experience because they brought me in to do product planning, which was like it's unclear what the product planning actually does. Like part of my job was to help figure out what to build and why we should build it. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the woman who hired me she hired me to be her replacement. And she ended up moving down to the Bay Area for personal reasons. And so for me, I came in product planning, and then I became a product unit manager for the Media Center Extender team. Our job was to put, it's like an engineering team, and our job is to put Media Center technology and connected consumer electronics devices. So anything with a network connection, so that we could remote the PC experience out to all these other screens in the home.
So have you ever thought at the time that since you joined at Microsoft as a product unit manager, now today you have transformed into a corporate vice president, have you ever thought about that I would get into a C-level executive at Microsoft at that time? Because yes, you had a pedigree one side, but have you ever thought in the direction?
I really, to be honest, I didn't know if it would happen or not. So I feel very, very fortunate to have had some incredible experiences at Microsoft, some amazing mentors, people who've really helped coach me through a number of experiences. And I've also held a number of different roles there. Most product companies or engineering companies, we sort of sway between a general manager model or a PUM model where you have a multidisciplinary manager or a discipline focused where you've got engineering leaders and product leaders. And, Microsoft has gone through those changes too. So, I've been a general manager at the company, and I've also been on the product side in product management. And I personally really love product management. I think it's a incredible discipline because it kind of forces you to take a more general manager type view and really think about the competition, think about the product, think about the customer, think about okay, what are we going to build that's really valuable? Because at the end of the day, every engineer and every product team wants to build something that people love. They love to use, and they want to use it. And people want to know that their work has meaning. And so that's a big role of the product manager is to make sure that we're building the right thing and that everyone understands why we're building it. What's the value we're delivering?
So how at that time, how was the culture back then and today, if you see, completely transformed?
Yeah.
But I wanted to seek some of the information from you in the form of the culture is one side, and what are the biggest challenges you have faced during the earlier days of those Microsoft back in 2004-05 timeframe?
Yeah. So the culture, the culture's really transformed at the company, and I feel like it's come more closer to me in the last 10, 15 years, which has been phenomenally great. From my perspective, it's become a lot more collaborative and a lot more focused on trying to go do the right thing for customers. Previously, when I first joined the company, you probably remember that cartoon with all the infighting amongst different groups at Microsoft. And it was pretty notorious at the time where the exec team would fund multiple internal competing bets, all going after the same thing. And, people wouldn't collaborate with each other. And that was just a really tough time.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest challenge I had in that phase, and this is in my first, it's 5 years in, I had a new manager in charge of Media Center and Media Room.
Yeah.
And this manager would sit me down and say, okay, here's what I want you to do. And he would tell me exactly what I wanted to do. And he'd say, okay, do not talk to this other guy. You can't talk to him. You need to do exactly what I say and don't talk to him. And then this other guy, who's also a direct report of his, he would sit down with him and say, okay, here's exactly what I want you to do, and don't talk to Ron. And it's okay. And
mutual lock.
Yeah, it's crazy. And literally, this other guy and I are now both corporate vice presidents at the company, and our kids have been in school together. We know each other personally, and we're always comparing notes. We're I can't believe he said that to you. It's that seems crazy. Of course we're trying to help each other, but it's that culture is gone. That doesn't exist anymore, which is it's just such a relief.
So Is it part of the new leadership transformation, or is it part of the evolution of the organization?
I think it's really, credit really goes to Satya. He has systematically gone through and been clear about the culture top down, what he wants to see, how he wants to see people work together, really setting a clear direction for the company, and then holding people accountable for working together and coming up with solutions for customers. It really is. I don't know what it was like to be a corporate officer, 15, 20 years ago, but I can imagine it'd be really challenging. And, during a number of those years before Satya took over, we were a very sales-focused organization.
Correct.
And the product leaders, most of my mentors retired during that time. They were just like, the culture's not right for me. And under Satya's leadership, it's really come back to be a lot more about customer first and then product. And what are we doing in the product? How are we differentiating ourselves? What do we stand for? And when you look at where the company was when I joined, we just came off of the antitrust settlement with the U.S. government.
So in your role, most of the time, you are being part of product management.
Yes.
So in product management, especially one side, you are going to be interacting with the engineering teams.
Yeah.
They are going to be building the teams.
Yeah.
And so what are the biggest challenges between the product management and the engineering team and the coordination? I want you to speak a little bit on the challenges that you have faced and how you navigated. And at the same time, I wanted to see your perspective of the lens in the experience during that time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So that's a great question, because there's always, I like to refer to it a little bit like a Greek tragedy, where everyone plays their part, So it's pretty common for there can be tension between the product leaders and the engineering leaders, or product management and engineering, and design. All of these play a role, and increasingly data science for us is really thinking about, what are we doing with data science, data analytics, and then also the work with the data engineers,
Right.
Just to try to get a more complete picture, and think about those four legs of the stool. Between engineering and product, there's a lot of tension. The product managers always think, things need to happen faster. Or maybe the quality level's not good enough, or something is wrong with the product. Or how can our competitors do this and we can't? What are the limitations? And then from an engineering perspective, engineers can often feel like the product managers they're really good at telling you what to do, but not why.
I see.
And the why is really, really important. And so a great product manager does both what and why, and then engineering can say when, or how and when. I think another really great thing, at least it's been helpful for me, is when you take on the product side, really diving in and understanding the architecture, because every architecture has limitations.
Correct.
And it's important for the product managers to really understand where those limitations are, and help the engineering team build in a direction that is going to have the right set of limitations from a customer perspective, and for the scenarios that you're trying to build. So for me, that's really probably the biggest challenge, when you see that if the product managers tend to take more of a business lens as opposed to a product lens, that can be a real challenge. And if the engineers are just focused on you want to rewrite every single time, that can also create some challenges. So it's like finding this balance between when's good enough, and what's the right mix to get between the two. That's really the art of great product management, in my opinion.
So now you talked about some of the challenges, and now what were the biggest success at Microsoft that you wanted to share? Do you have any?
Gosh. So my biggest success, it was not through my own doing, but I came to Office about 8 years ago to work on document collaboration, really to turn Office, Word, Excel, PowerPoint into a tool for collaborative work. And this has both successes and failures in it. But the success part was we got this whole thing working. There were 2 prior attempts to do this before I joined. But that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go, because I thought it would be an interesting problem to solve. And we got it working about 6 months prior to the global pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, from a product, part of product management is being able to time things correctly in the market. And we could have never foreseen the global pandemic. And so it was just sheer fortune that it all got working immediately before the world went home to work.
Correct.
And this would have had an incredibly negative impact on the Office franchise if we weren't able to get collaboration working before the pandemic.
Correct.
But it actually worked out really, really well for us. Probably my biggest lesson learned in that is I came from Windows, where I was running the Windows Phone release for Windows 10, and I came over to Office.
I see.
And Windows and Office culture are very, very different. And in some pretty material ways. And when I came into Office, I was like, well, what's the problem? This should be our number one thing. The competition has a better collab solution than we do.
Yeah.
We need to get moving and really make sure that we're delivering this.
So how do you handle some kind of resistance or pushbacks that you're encountering from the teams? So do you get frustrated at that time, or do you, what's happening, all these things?
Yeah.
So as a leader, what would be the mindset that you carry to handle those tough situations?
Yeah, the mindset has to be one of curiosity. It has to be, because it's, and asking yourself, particularly as the leader, what am I missing? Because you're probably missing something. And it's being able to have that curiosity to be like, okay, the people are good. They're very talented. I mean, we have an incredibly talented set of people that work at Microsoft, and so it isn't a question of competence. It's really a question of, okay, how do you what am I missing? Is there some incentive they're operating under, something that they think is important that's leading to these behaviors? And then how do you get past that? How do you make it okay and safe for people to come forward? I had a situation recently with one of my teams where I've been using the product and it's got some challenges, and they know it has some challenges, and we've been working together on this for many months. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get together and let's go through all of the problems that you see in the product, right? And let's just talk about them. And it was awkward and a little embarrassing, because they're like, oh yeah, this is a problem and that's a problem. I'm like, hey, I'd much rather know, if I know where the problems are, we can then focus on fixing them, and then I can help you, as opposed to us pretending that there aren't problems.
I see.
Right? Because if we all know there are problems and we're not willing to talk about it, that's usually a recipe for disaster. It's just a question of, when does that catch up with you?
I see. So you, as a leader, you can foresee those kind of disasters, and then you can predict and you can take the right actions. So in your journey, that I wanted to ask you is that what kind of a key strategy decision that you have taken? Because at the end of the day, you have to make a big impact. These office products, shared office products, have to be deployed across the globe in every desktop pretty much.
Yeah.
So what were the biggest strategy decisions that you have taken in your life during the core time, especially at Microsoft?
Okay, great. I have 2 that I can share with you, 2 strategy decisions. One was from quite a while ago, maybe about 10 years ago. I was working in the Xbox group, and we were shipping Windows Phone, Xbox Live on Windows Phone. And so this was the same year that the Xbox team launched the Connect product. So it was very console focused. And so we were focused on the phone, delivering the Games Hub to the phone. And it turned out to be an important part of Windows Phone, but unfortunately Windows Phone did not do very well.
I see.
And at the end of that project, we built up a mobile experience inside of the Xbox group. Didn't exist before.
Correct.
hired Matt Booty to run the games effort, and he now runs the game studio. We had a whole group of people building mobile experiences, and that didn't exist inside Xbox. And at the end of that experience, you can imagine, like the Kinect launches at Holiday and Windows Phone launches, and the Xbox with Kinect did really, really well. And so all my peers and all the teams that worked on that were rewarded really well. But the people that built the mobile expertise inside of Xbox on my team were like, oh my gosh, we did this great thing for the company, but the phone turned out to not be very successful. So I sat my leadership team down and I said, okay, we've just spent all this time building this experience on mobile. We've got people with mobile background and mobile experience. We built this incredible asset for the company in terms of like capabilities. How could we apply these capabilities to benefit the Xbox business?
I see.
And so we went on about a 90-day exploration with the design team, with our research team, and we ended up deciding to incubate and launch Xbox Smart Glass, which turns your smartphone or tablet into a controller for the Xbox.
I see.
And we did this literally in the span of about 6 months. Like we just made this decision, we pivoted, and then we managed to convince HBO to ship the Game of Thrones second screen experience on this. We had a whole keyboard, and it was incredibly well received. And so there's a big gaming conference every year called E3, which happens to be in June, and we effectively stole the show. Like it was incredible. Like we were very, very well received. So much so that Don Matrick, who was running the Xbox division in July, called me into his staff meeting.
Oh, wow.
And he said, how did you come up with the idea to do this? And I was like, well, we did all this work on mobile. And I told him, we did all this work on mobile, and it turned out not to be very valuable. And so we pivoted and decided to do this instead. And he was very animated and very excited about the fact that we'd done this, which was kind of fun. But that was an example of a strategic product decision where we were like, hey, we know people are using these smartphones and tablets for entertainment, and they're using them in the home. And we want the Xbox to be the center of this experience. How can we kind of make those devices a satellite of that Xbox experience or a companion for that Xbox experience to deliver a richer home entertainment experience? And so that's one example. Second example is while we were doing the in Office, while we're doing the document collaboration work for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, we noticed there was a bigger trend that was happening at that time about these flexible workspaces that were really emerging and allowing people to kind of bring all their work together in one place. And instead of bouncing around between different applications, really kind of have a different model around this. I prepared a pitch to our leadership that said, hey, I think there's a bigger trend here around the decomposition of work into smaller and smaller parts, really driven by mobile, and these flexible workspaces where you can collect all those pieces and put together distinct workflows. And interestingly enough, artificial intelligence is only accelerating this trend because it's causing more and more of, this cycle is going faster and faster as a result. So it's interesting. But that was the other strategic pivot or decision that we made. And as part of that, that was the foundation for the incubation and launch of Microsoft Loop, which is a flexible canvas that allows space for teams to think, plan, and create together.
I see.
And
so better collaborations.
Yeah, better collaboration. So and collaboration in line with where you are.
And what is how the Microsoft is getting ready to make people to consume the future products?
Well, hopefully, this is a great question. I mean, it's the rise of AI over the course of the last year has been truly phenomenal. This is clearly a platform shift, and it's one that Microsoft is, we're investing quite heavily in this opportunity. Just for my own personal use, like AI is phenomenally great. Those large language models are really great at summarizing information and making it easy to kind of synthesize large bodies of information. In fact, 2 weekends ago, not this past weekend, but the one before, I was working on a paper for a strategy paper for next fiscal year, and I used Copilot to help me do research. And I didn't ask Copilot to rewrite sections for me, but I did, as I was looking for data points and sources for competitive research, I just asked Copilot for information, and it would bring it back with all the sources. And so I can click through on the sources and take a look. It made my research, it literally cut hours out of my prep time.
Wow.
And it's like we're looking for that kind of efficiency gain with these large language models. So when you think about integrating it with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and to make it easier for you to get your work done, and then also the integration that we're doing with Teams and Outlook, like the Teams meeting scenarios are phenomenally great. Like AI will do a summary for you at the end of the meeting. You can query it and ask it questions. And I think when I think about where it's going, like for me, it's really about grounding in that enterprise data and in the information that you know, and being able to ask it questions like, oh, did Jagan get his work done on this project?
Exactly.
And have the LLM return back and tell you, what's been done or summarize the work that's been done. It's incredibly efficient.
Since you reminded me one thing when I was using my Teams for my meetings, right? So since I was thinking that the AI in future, next few months, I'm assuming that the Teams is going to be using this, is going to be building this feature. For example, when I'm in the meeting with my team members, and when my turn comes, I'm supposed to be responding some response back to my team. AI can give me a notes that Jagan speak this. You don't need to prep anything.
Yes.
I'm assuming that feature is going to be coming pretty much soon from a Teams aspect of it, so that it eliminates to speak. Prep ourselves, and it gives us a prompt to speak.
Well, it can definitely help on the prep. There's sort of two parts to this that I think are interesting. So there's absolutely that scenario, right, around helping you in a meeting be more effective. But there's also, like, what can the LLMs do to help teams coordinate their work? And to me, like, given the stuff that I've been working on in my career, like, that's the area where I get really excited, because I think about how much inefficiency is there in teamwork. You know, it's hard to know the handoffs really matter, and making sure that the things are being orchestrated well. So, like, having AI take notes for the group of people. They say you want to do a brainstorm. Like, we released this back in the fall on Whiteboard, but you can have all the sticky notes up on the whiteboard and then just say, hey, Copilot, can you categorize these for me? Well, I mean, if you've run a brainstorm session, you can literally spend hours trying to get the sticky notes just right and get them transcribed. And this happens literally in seconds with Copilot. So we're looking for those kinds of efficiency gains to kind of take the drudgery out of the work, and so that people can focus on the higher value activities of, like, critical thinking and trying to think through, like, okay, well, what should we be? Is there something we haven't thought of? Is there some other angle to this that we should pursue? It's a little bit more like the case study method. From HBS, it's similar to kind of free people up to do that kind of work.
Yeah, there are large LLMs, ChatGPT, and lots of API integration is happening. So every business kind of apprehensive to send their data back to these LLMs or external systems
to train them.
So what is the confidence Microsoft is giving back to these businesses that, hey, your data is being protected? So what is the Microsoft strategy to build a confidence in the businesses?
So I mentioned earlier, about running on trust. So we don't use our customers' data to train the models. That's not part of our strategy. So we really we keep our customers' data secure, and then we use the models. They're really used as a way to help shape the output. So, like, the customer data is really grounding for the model, so that the results you get back are really relevant to your specific situation, or as relevant as they can be to your specific situation. But I do think that's a really important point, is that there'll be a wide range of different perspectives on this, and people looking to try to evolve these models, and the models are improving constantly. But from our perspective, we really believe that our customers' data is our customers' data.
correct.
Yeah, like that's not ours. And Microsoft. One of the things that I love about the company is that we really are oriented around our customers' success. And so like we're only successful if our customers are successful. And our customers are not our product, right? Our products are our products, and they help our customers. And that's the way the entire company is oriented this way.
Yeah, since because the security building trust is a key element.
Critical.
And at the same time, the innovation is also going jet speed.
Yes.
So when the innovation is going jet speed in this kind of a direction, and at the same time, the demand from the users' expectations. So I wanted to see the lens from a Microsoft standpoint of view, the innovation versus the demand. What is the correct right balance? How do you strike the balance?
Oh, that's such a good question too, Jagan. So yeah, I mean, I think I can only speak for my area and office around this, but it's it is tricky because we want to make a lot of the way we think about it is
because if you go too fast, the users cannot be able to take it.
Exactly. Yes. So there's like the adoption piece of like how do you help people through this journey, and I think. Maybe a way to think about it from a product perspective or product design perspective is, we want you to have a good experience, like make sure the promise is clear and that you can then fulfill that promise with your product experience. And then what happens is you start building more and more confidence with this. So, like for instance, today, even though people have been playing with ChatGPT for a while, many people struggle to put together prompts. They don't know what to say, right? And so part of what we're doing is in the product, we're then, based on what you're doing, and if we can just understand your intent of what you're trying to do, present to you some options, right? So say, hey, here's some potential prompts that might be interesting or might help you, and is a way to kind of help ease people into the experience so they can start to get value or start to realize the value. But one of the things you want to do from a product perspective is, customers users only want to have like a couple seconds until they see the value. And so it can't be some long drawn out process to get to the value. It's got to be, okay, I put in what I want, and then seconds later I'm getting a high quality response that then encourages me to either share it with someone or prompt it again to refine it. And so that's how we're thinking about the product experience with AI. And the thing I personally think the hardest part of this is the capabilities of the models are changing so rapidly. It's going to be fascinating to see. I mean, even just in the past year, how much more capable the models are now than they were a year ago. And you think, wow, like if we continue on this trajectory, then the probability of having a really great response every single time will just improve. And then that should help us kind of unlock that next level of, valuable scenarios.
I see. So that's where you try to create a balance and all the stuff. So I wanted to see your lens because why didn't you choose to go for other company?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So Jagan, I've agonized over this also, right, through points in my career, honestly. About every major milestone, at 5-year intervals, I go out and ask my personal network about like, okay, this is the experience I'm getting. Here's what I'm learning. What do you think? What should I? How should I think about this? And it's fascinating to me because I would say it has maybe less to do. My learning and all of that is it really has less to do with. Did you stay at the same company? But it really has more to do with, well, what exactly were you doing? And what experience were you getting? And what mentorship did you have? And what kind of life lessons did you learn? Or what professional lessons did you learn with each of these positions? Like, I think that's more important than the actual company name associated with this. And I look at my career at Microsoft, I've worked in Windows, I've worked in Xbox, and I've worked in Office. And I've worked roughly equal time in all three.
I see.
And I've had incredible experiences, very different. It's like at the time, it felt like joining 3 different companies, where you're just shifting and thinking, wow, this is a different perspective. I've been in different roles. I've been an engineering manager. I've been a product leader. I've been a general manager. And in all of I've been in product planning. And in each of these roles, I've also had a different perspective and learned quite a lot. So I think it really has more to do with, are you do you have an opportunity in front of you to learn and to get experience, because ultimately that experience is what's going to be most helpful to you down the road. Like I say this to our kids that are in the working world now too, because they're worried about what their salary is. And I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? What matters is what experience are you getting, right? Because ultimately that experience is what's going to carry you to the next position, next job, next company. And if you're getting great experience somewhere, that's a phenomenal thing to do. Like I think about Microsoft and what we've been through, like the change and the transformation in the last 10 years. Like, I mean, I've been living a case study of organizational change, of culture transformation, of business transformation, business acceleration. Those are the kinds of things that it's hard to get that experience somewhere else. And so like I look at that and think, wow, like this has been a really amazing experience. Yeah. And I'm incredibly fortunate to have that opportunity. But like to work on adding a new value prop to a 30-year-old software franchise like Office, that's like arguably one of the most successful software franchises on the planet. Right. But to basically transform that and turn it into a tool for collaborative work and literally touch hundreds of millions of people's lives with this, like that's an incredible opportunity. It's one I feel very fortunate to have had.
Wow. So that means every 5 years you have
a check-in.
And is there any specific formula inside that's been defined in Microsoft?
So we've had several different formulas for this since I joined the company. I think what we're doing now is actually working really well. Like you typically try to get a mentor who is not the level just above you, but maybe 2 levels above where you are career-wise or where someone is career-wise.
It is purely independent.
Yeah, it's pretty independent, but it's heavily encouraged.
I see.
People go through and we try to, it's one of the things we try to do is make sure everyone who wants a mentor has one. The thing I think there's sort of 2 aspects to mentoring. Like there's one which is sort of pick someone who is at another career stage that's maybe 2 steps beyond where you are, right? Because they will remember what they were like when they were at your career stage. And they'll have some good advice for you, and typically try to pick someone who maybe thinks a little differently than you do, because it has to be enough so it's relatable, but maybe different enough that it pushes your thinking. And then the second one, which I personally really like, is peer mentoring, where you basically, it's almost like doing a case study, and it has to be with a peer who is not in your immediate area, but like maybe doesn't really know that much about what you're doing, but they're at a similar level.
In a different org.
In a different org, different part of the business. And you literally sit them down and you're like, some of the best mentoring sessions I've facilitated are peer mentoring sessions. I've done a couple at the team in Boston, because in Boston we had like parts of a number of different teams, and so we're able to get the right mix. So you get people that don't work well together, or don't work together day to day, but they are just in a workshop, and you're like, okay, here's my problem, here's what I'm working on, and then you hear everyone's perspective on it. It's almost like doing a case study, or treating the thing you're working on like a case study with your peers, and that's another incredibly effective way to kind of it's like renting a CPU.
I see.
To sort of get some more cycles on the thing that you're working on. Think about like, okay, what am I missing? Oh, wow, I didn't think about that. And it's similar to sitting in an HBS classroom where you're hearing your classmates talk about the case, but the case is the one that you're living, right? So the most critical part of this peer mentoring formula is finding people who are, they don't know, they're not in your immediate group, because they need to not be invested in whatever you're doing. Like they need to have an objective, perspective. But I think the fact they're at the company, you can talk freely with them, but you can also do something like this outside the company, obviously withholding confidential information. But really thinking about how do you how do you get mentoring both from a peer perspective and then from people that are more senior than you? And then maybe there's a third one that we introduced a couple years ago, right before the pandemic, which I thought was really helpful for senior people. Is it's called reverse mentoring.
Or reverse mentoring.
And it's where you, like someone like me, is mentored by someone who's really early in career, and it's fascinating, right? Because they're telling you like, oh, well, you're thinking about it wrong.
Challenging.
Yes, challenging you, challenging your perspective, and challenging you to think a little differently, and telling you, well, look, if my cohort and peers think about it this way, the way you think about it is not the right way. You might want to expand your perspective. So I would say from my time at Microsoft, probably maybe 2 or 3 key lessons. One of them is, oh my gosh, ask for help. Like, it's so powerful to ask for help. And it's the thing that people, I'm type A driven, want to go make things happen. And just pausing for a minute and just opening up to the people around you and saying, look, I don't necessarily know what to do in this situation. I could really use some help. And 9 times out of 10, people want to help you. So, it's that to me is a really powerful life lesson, not just apply at work, but just broadly, because everyone's struggling on some level with something. And so being able to ask for help is a really powerful one. And then the second one I would say is really about like relationships really, really matter. And the way you build great relationships is through shared success.
Correct.
And being able to like go and do something together, have an experience where you achieve success together. And I'm not a big fan of like networking for the sake of networking, but I really enjoy working with people to go do something and have some shared success. And that's really, really important at a place like Microsoft that is a very large matrix. You constantly need people to be able to rely on people. You need people to help you. You need to be able to work really, really well across group, because the things that we can do to differentiate our products, if you could do them yourself, like in your small group, the chance of you creating something that's truly like innovative, long-term differentiation or like breakthrough, low.
Wow.
Right? If you work with other people and you're like, oh, if I take my thing and combine it with this other thing and combine it with this other thing, wow, we would have something here that would be incredibly differentiated. And we did this on collaboration, actually. So we enabled collaboration on label protected documents. So you could have full security. Like people are saying, oh, well, the reason why I use Collab in another product or use Collab is because I don't have time for security. I need to just work. I need to work with Jagan. So I'm just going to take it out of the corporate network and email it to him. And so we were like, no, you could have full security, like Microsoft's full security on this document and the ability to collaborate. That's a breakthrough. And that required working with like half a dozen teams super closely, another half a dozen teams, bringing together all this like across our tech stack. And then it's a real differentiator. And so if you're a company that has really high security requirements, you can use Microsoft Security and Collab inside of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Like that's a really powerful solution. But that's an example of something that's really differentiated and very hard to do in the market, that you can only do if you're actually willing to work with other people and come together.
I think definitely you said it very rightly that I'm going to definitely use one of your technique today, because most of our audiences want to become great leaders like you. So what is a advice that you can give based on your wisdom? Wow.
So I would say probably the biggest piece of advice would be do things you love, and work with people that you think are amazing, and ideally work with people that you think are smarter than you, because that's always a great formula. Like a great leader is someone who can kind of bring out the great around them, and can really kind of get 1 and 1 and 1 to equal 5 or 10.
Correct.
And so it's not necessarily about what you individually are contributing, but it's like, how do you make the group better? And so, but it has to really start with working in either a domain or with people or on problems that you're passionate about. Because if you're passionate about it, and you're excited to get up every day and go solve problems with these people that you're working with, and you're excited to take on those challenges. And so I think that's probably the main piece of advice I would give. I look back on my career and think, wow, I wish I'd come immediately into product management.
Today you are a Microsoft corporate vice president, and you have achieved to this level. And I'm sure there are many people who have really helped you to get to this stage. So who are the people that you wanted to show your gratitude? That
Gosh, there's so many. I'm very grateful to John Cunningham to convince me to move to Seattle. I'm very grateful to Rick Thompson to hiring me at the company. I'm incredibly grateful to Joe Belfiore, who was my manager for many, many years at the company, and really pushed me, challenged me in many ways. I'm also incredibly grateful to Alesh Holacek, who's my current manager, and to Rajesh Jha. I think Rajesh is doing a phenomenal job. We run a very complex, large business, and these folks show up every day. They give it 150%. They're constantly pushing, but I think in a very respectful way, and encouraging everyone to kind of do their best. But I'm just very grateful for the opportunities that folks have given me along the way. That's another piece to success is just realizing, wow, when people give you an opportunity, it's really an incredible blessing. It's an opportunity to really shine and do great work. And there's, those opportunities are things to be grateful for.
fantastic. What an inspirations from you, Ron. It was a fantastic session. I really enjoyed talking to you, listening your story, and I'm sure our audience are going to be getting benefited out of this entire talk. So thank you very much for coming to our show, Tech Leader 360. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Jagan. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Talk to you later.